Hey guys, it's Sam, and this is my spoiler-free review of The Wicked King by Holly Black. This is the second book in the Folk of Air trilogy, the first book being The Cruel Prince, which I've already done a full spoiler-free review on as well, and I will link that on the screen. So while this review won't feature any spoilers for this book, it might for the first book, so I definitely recommend checking that review out if you haven't started the series. So this book takes place 5 months after the events of the first book, after Jude and Cardan made their bargain, which is rhyming and not intended. So if you've watched my Cruel Prince review, you know that I wasn't a big fan of Cruel Prince. I read it after, much like this book, I read it very far after the hype, so I had all this hype for it and then didn't really get quite the appeal. Like, it was a fun book, but I didn't love it, but I had pretty high hopes for the rest of the series, and everyone has been telling me for months to read this second book, and I do plan on reading the third book as well, but I have not read it yet, so please don't even like make any comments, emojis, anything in the comments about it. Only talk about this book. If you talk about the next book, I'm gonna be angry and I'll delete your comments and maybe block you. I don't know. So for this first, I'm gonna talk about the world building. This was similar world building to the first book, but I wasn't as angry about it because I kind of expected it. Like I said in the first review of Cruel Prince, I like this world kind of being just like eclectic and very like traditional fairy, and like the hobgoblins and like just the fae that look like magical fae and not the fae that we've necessarily always seen in like Sarah J. Maas books and stuff, where they're just like pretty elf people basically. Like, I like that Cardan like has a tail and like is very pretty, but also has these like fae like features. So I really enjoy that, and that there's just like an assortment of fae races in here. But I also do think the world building is still not as strong as it could be, and kind of where I do sort of dock points from this series, because it could be a little more fleshed out as far as like the magic and the world and some of the political stuff. Like, a lot of things are just very glossed over, and that was okay. Like, I didn't get mad about that in this book. It was something that I sort of expected, and so it wasn't a disappointment, but it is something that I still kind of think critically about. I don't really think this series is for the world building or anything like that. I think the major focus is obviously the characters and the plot above all else. Let me get to the characters. I liked Jude more in this book. I think it was some distance from her that made me like her more, because in the first book, I felt like I didn't quite see the arc that we were getting from her. Like, there's not a lot of explanation. This book series just goes by very quickly. I don't really feel the passage of time. So I didn't really believe some of the things that she had like learned in the short amount of time that we had with her. Where this book, since there was a time jump, I felt like better about where she was in the world and could sort of like come up with backstory of like how she's gotten like some more power that she has, and just things that have happened in the background. So I was better with her, and she felt like more of that sort of wonderful Slytherin character that I wanted in the first book. I also just really appreciate, speaking of just like Slytherinness of this book, everyone in this book is bad. Like, that's what is sort of nice about it, because you don't really have any like morality politics when talking about this book, because it's just like they're all fae and bad. Like, there's obviously characters that are like more on the like good spectrum generally, but like even some of the characters who are seen as like less bad are still like tricky fae, or just like their lack of humanity is shown frequently, and I sort of enjoy that. I also enjoy that with the relationship between Jude and Cardan. I kind of like that there's no, obviously, like love triangle. There's no alternative that people could be like, oh, but that one nice fairy smiled at her one time and she should really go for him. Like, there really is only Cardan. So it's kind of nice that you don't have any of that like, oh, but she should be like going for someone else. It's just like, it's her and Cardan, and like that's it. And even that is not like at all a stable relationship, and is very like toxic and problematic, but it's a very compelling and interesting dynamic. It is a real hate to love romance, and the moments that you have with them in this book are actually so few and far between. Like, there's definitely just a lot of them, or a lot of like at least her like thinking about him, or like wondering what he thinks of her, but not in an overly like pining over him way. She's like, I hate him, and they hate each other, but there's still this attraction, and I enjoy it. I enjoy the dynamic. Is it toxic AF? Yes. Is it supposed to be? Yes. like I don't think anyone is fooling themselves that like this is not a healthy relationship at all, or even like actually an established relationship. Like, obviously, like they're not like together. They have a connection, but like they're not together, and I kind of like it, and I want more. Like, I wanted more of those scenes of them together, because when I got done with this book, I was like, there's really only like 3 scenes of them like interacting, really. So that was good. It definitely left me wanting more, and I enjoyed that dynamic with them more than the first book, because the first book they barely interact at all, and that was one of my complaints. So this book, they definitely had more of a dynamic and relationship that I found fun to read. Lastly, I'm gonna talk about the plot. Like I mentioned earlier, I don't think Holly Black in this series does a good job of kind of showing us the passage of time. Like, I really don't feel like a lot of time passes, so I'm really not sure like how long people are in certain situations, but I was sort of okay with that in this case because one, I was prepared for it from book one, and two, there's some parts of this book that I'm like, I wouldn't have wanted to be in a traditional fantasy book where we were in that part forever. So I'm kind of okay with it. This book, even more than the first book in my opinion, is very compulsively readable and just what I wanted, because I've been getting obviously back into fantasy more after my like anxiety flare of the fall, the great anxiety flare of 2019. And so this just being like compulsively readable and like fluffy in a way but having like a dark tinge to it but nothing like scary was just what I wanted. Compulsively readable. Do I want to read Queen of Nothing like fairly soon? Yes, I hope that I do. I put this off for so long because I was so like mad about Cruel Prince, but I'm hoping to read Queen of Nothing before the middle of next year. I just know how it works, so I'm giving myself such a long time frame, but I am asking for it for Christmas. It's on my Amazon wish list, so there's a good chance I'll get it. I don't know. So I end up giving The Wicked King 4 out of 5 stars, and I will be doing a spoilery gush on this because I know you guys want to hear my feelings, and I miss doing gushes because I feel like I haven't done a lot of gushes lately because I haven't read a lot of books that have like stuff you can discuss like this book and that I've thought were like gush worthy. So I'm doing one, so I'll link that on the screen. So comment down below, let me know what you thought of The Wicked King. I know you guys will have a lot of thoughts. This is very popular. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye.